Good afternoon. I will call to order the August 15th meeting of the Minneapolis City Planning Commission. My name is Matt Brown. I serve as president of the commission. I'm joined today by Commissioners Gagnon, Magrino, Slack, Sweezy, Lupe-Pier, and Breland. Our first item of business is to approve the actions from the August 1st meeting. May I have a motion to approve those actions? We have a motion and a second. All in favor? And that motion carries. Our next item of business is to organize the agenda. You can find hard copies of the agenda in the hallway. We'll start at the top and determine which items will be discussed and which items will be approved on consent. So starting at the top of the agenda, item number 1 is at 412 East 48th Street and 412 and a half East 48th Street, 2 variances and a minor subdivision. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 2 is the Phillips Community Center Aquatics Facility at 2323 11th Avenue South. Site plan review. We will discuss item 2. Item 3 is Lake Plaza at 419 East Lake Street, a conditional use permit and site plan review related to an addition to an existing shopping center. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on item 3? Seeing no one, we'll put that on consent. Item 4 is the Central Avenue Northeast Pedestrian Oriented Overlay District rezoning study, which is on Central Avenue Northeast between 27th and 18th Avenues. That is a rezoning study. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put item 4 on consent. Item 5 is a zoning code text amendment related to temporary healthcare dwelling units. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on that item? Seeing no one, we'll put item 5 on consent. And item 6 is also a zoning code text amendment that relates to zoning code standards for skyways. We'll discuss item 6. So our agenda as amended is as follows. Items 1, 3, 4, and 5 will be on consent, and we will discuss items 2 and 6. Commissioners may have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. There is no committee of the whole consent agenda update at today's meeting, so we'll move on to the public hearing portion of the meeting. And at this time, I'll open the public hearing for the items on the consent agenda. That's items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Is anyone wishing to speak in opposition, or excuse me, is anyone wishing to speak on any of the items on the consent agenda? That's items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Did you want to speak on a particular item? Just want to make sure. Okay, yeah, that's near the Phillips Community Center, so we'll discuss that item. So again, items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Is there anyone wishing to speak on any of those items? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and may have a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. And that motion carries. Next, we'll move on to our items for discussion. We'll start with item 2, and staff is Ms. Dvorak. And we previously approved a site plan for this project several months ago, so this is an update to that. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about the changes and also some of the outstanding issues.
Good afternoon. Correct, President Brown. This is the Phillips Aquatic Center. This was before the Planning Commission in December of last year, and a series of applications were approved by the Planning Commission to allow the addition to the Phillips Aquatic Center, including site plan review, which is here before you this afternoon. It's back because the addition has grown in size by almost 1,000 square feet, and there have been some changes to the interior and some changes to the parking lot. And given those changes, it does require to come back to Planning Commission. It's very similar to what was approved in 2015. And there is one item on the agenda one condition on the agenda tonight specifically that the applicant does want to talk about. And so I will just go through that, and I'll just walk you through the site plan and then show you the elevations. So the existing Phillips Community Center is located here. This is also where Waite House is located. They are proposing this smaller addition, I should say. It's a 9,500 square foot addition to the existing building. It is for a second pool. There's one pool in the existing building, and there will be a second pool here. So right now there's parking in that location, so that parking will be displaced by the addition. And then there's outdoor green space here that is going to be coming out, and then the parking lot will be shifting over towards 11th. And all of that was part of the original plan that you saw last winter. The biggest change probably to the plan, currently there are two entrances into the building. One is here off of 13th, and this is the main entrance for Waite House. And then the main entrance into the community center for the park is located here. There was going to be a new entrance in this location. However, after working through the internal floor plans and making additional changes to the interior of the existing building, and then coincidentally with the addition, they have chosen to maintain just this one entrance into the building and modify it and enhance it. And you can see in the elevations that they were adding a canopy that projects out from the building, which makes it more apparent from East 24th Street when driving by that this is now the main entrance. And all of the walkways on the site do lead you to this entrance if you are trying to enter the community center or the pools. Last December, we did have a condition of approval as part of alternative compliance to deal with windows, and this specifically is what the applicant wants to discuss this afternoon, are the windows. We had granted alternative compliance to allow 20% windows on the three sides of the addition. Again, the window requirement is just for the addition. We don't look at the existing building when going through site plan review for window percentages. As you can see here, this is different than what is in your packet. If you were to compare, if you opened your packet and compared it to what you see on the overhead screen, we had recommended in the report tonight that they meet the 30%, and we had indicated a specific minimum square footage of windows. They have modified these elevations since late last week, over the weekend, to comply with the 30% window requirement on the west elevation, which is in this location. So again, just this part of the addition, this now meets the 30% requirement. They're asking to maintain the 20% on the East 24th Street and then the 13th Avenue south sides of the building. And that is in conformance with the condition of approval from last year. In this report, we had recommended 30%, but I wanted to confirm that we had suggested only a 20% window requirement given the pool and then the population that will be using the pool for privacy purposes and also for shadowing within the building. And so the applicants are here and they can speak further to that, but I can just, I guess, call out the one condition of approval that they are wanting to discuss this evening. And so that is all that I will speak to, but I can stand for any questions.
All right. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Kronzer.
Hi, Hillary. I may have missed it. Can you point out where the EFS is proposed to be?
Yes. So the EFS on this building, so this is the existing wall, and the architect can speak to this again, and we did discuss this last time. So this is a brick wall. When they take the wall down to build the addition, what's left above will need to come off because of how it was constructed. And so they're proposing to put EFS in this location above the addition. The rest of the wall, though, where they're not impacting the existing wall, would remain the brick.
Okay. Are there any further questions of staff? If there are none, I'll open the public hearing on this item. I'd like to ask the applicant to speak first, and please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. And if you could focus your presentation on the window coverage issue.
Commissioners, my name is Dana Murdoch. I am a design project manager with the Minneapolis Park Board, and I'm the manager for this project that we are, as you can imagine, very excited about moving forward with. Hillary did present most of our cases. I'll try to minimize what I had to say today. You know that back in December, the 20% was allowed on those two sides, the east side and the south side. We're essentially asking for that 20% to remain. To look at the Chapter 530.80 alternative compliance, there are 3 points that you can review without reading through all of them. I'll jump to number 2. Strict adherence to the requirements is impractical because of site location or conditions. We have a few conditions that does make that 30% impractical, so that we are asking for the 20%. Number 1, there are glare issues. When a lifeguard is standing there and they have the sun coming in through these windows, it reflects off the water of the pool into their eyes, and it makes it difficult for them to be able to do their job well. That's a life safety issue. Secondly, it's impractical because of potential condensation issues. Pool environments are very humid, and this is difficult with all that glazing. So yes, we still have glass in there. It will be difficult, but we'll have less of it to have to maintain and be concerned about. Thirdly, strict adherence to the zoning code would jeopardize a portion of the goal of the project, and that is to serve this immediate community. We have a lot of Muslim women with their families that want to be able to use this for learn to swim programs, and privacy is a large issue. So while yes, we can put curtains in front of them, many facilities do that. The thing is, it's still a window, and that is there is perception with large windows. We still have a window. We will cover that, but we're trying to minimize that connection, that visual connection to outside. I'll go back to point number 1 of 530.80, and that is the alternative meets the intent of the chapter, that it plans, and I'm summarizing, that it plans to include amenities that would address any adverse effects. And one of the items in there is architectural enhancements. We are doing what we can, and I think it's the architects have done a nice job on the elevation to bring some architectural interest to it. There are these interesting smaller windows that have color to them. Yes, it's a precast concrete addition. We do have cost restraints, like you can very well imagine, and they're doing some nice things on that exterior of that building. And also, one thing to speak to is security. So if you think about that glass, oftentimes it's looked at as being a visual connection to the interior and also a connection to the exterior. This facility already has multiple cameras on the exterior and interior, and our intent is to maintain that surveillance security around this building. That is all I have to present on this. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. And commissioners, are there any questions of the applicant? Hearing none, is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? No? If there is no one else who would like to speak, we'll close the public hearing. And Commissioner Lupke-Fear.
I have a question for staff.
Huh.
Hillary, can you just, since you got the plans over the weekend, can you tell me whether the current staff recommendations that we were given reflect the window square footages that are being presented to us today in the elevations?
No. So to update the table, then, if you look at page 4 of the staff report, so what's proposed on, just going from the top down. So the first floor is the 11th Avenue side. So now they're at 101 square feet of windows, and that's 20%. On East 24th Street, which is the bottom of the elevation, they're at 20%, so that's 244 square feet of windows. And then on the addition facing 13th Avenue, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong one. Oh no, on 11th, sorry, this west elevation. I'm doing it wrong. I was pointing to the right ones. This is meeting the 30%, so this is the 149, so that at the top of your,
Okay.
I wrote it wrong when I did my calcs earlier today. So they are meeting 30% facing 13th, and then they're at 20% on the other two.
Okay. Thank you, Larry.
All right, Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes, I'm very supportive of all the staff recommendations except for the window square footage. And I'd like to make an amend A3. Should I do that now or wait till the other
I
portions are
I
approved?
think it's best if we make a motion first. We close public.
So I would approve all the staff recommendations except for A3.
All right, so Commissioner Vreeland is moving approval of the site plan review with an amendment to condition 3. Are you simply wanting to strike condition 3? Okay, then you can state that amendment.
I'd like to propose, I think these are the numbers. I'd like to propose a motion to amend A3, the site plan review amendment, and the language concerning square footage of the windows to the following, which is consistent with the approved language of the December 7th, 2015 actions of the Minneapolis Planning Commission. And that would be for the square footage numbers to be 150 square feet, which is 30% of the first floor facing 11th Avenue, 246 square feet, which is 20% of the first floor facing East 24th Street, and 100 square feet, 20% of the first floor facing 13th Avenue South. And I have more information and background if there's a second to my motion.
Right, thank you. And so we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the site plan review as recommended with a modification to condition number 3. Yes,
Friendly
Commissioner
amendment,
Luppier.
the amendment really quickly, just reflecting the
Yes.
numbers Hillary gave just to run it off by a square foot. Can we have it read 149 square feet, 244 square feet, and 101 square feet, just so we don't have them miss out on based on 1 square foot?
Sure.
All right. I think that's fine. We can make that amendment, and I'll just restate the motion for the record. So that is to approve the site plan review with a modification to condition number 3, so that it reads that there shall be at least 149 square feet of windows facing 11th Avenue South, 244 square feet of windows facing East 24th Street, and 101 square feet of windows facing 13th Avenue South. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Vreeland. Yes, please do.
Project I've worked on in the past 10 years. And it brings together capital funding from state bonding, Hennepin County, Minneapolis Public Schools, Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, Minneapolis Swims, the East Phillips Improvement Coalition, Wells Fargo, Margaret Cargill Foundation, Rogue Foundation, Midtown Phillips Association, Ventura Village Housing and Land Use Committee, the Piper Family Foundation, Augsburg, the Shakopee, Mdewakan Sioux Community for a $250,000 matching grant, and many other individuals, businesses, and organizations contributed. The City of Minneapolis and Park Board agreement to fund neighborhood parks includes a racial equity criteria that's now part of funding for the Phillips Community Center and pool. I think it's okay that it looks like a pool. And I think it's really important that this pool function well because it's such a much needed public resource. I think the reasons that were granted in 2015 of both the moisture issues and the need for privacy are still very important. And I think the fact that there has been a number of community meetings where the importance of bringing more families and more women of color into a pool in a way that's culturally sensitive has been something that's been advocated very strongly. And I would like to honor those, the community efforts to have this pool meet those needs. The interior is designed specifically for diverse communities. I think it's okay that the exterior also do that. And I think, like I said, I think it's okay for a pool or a gym to look like a pool or a gym. we don't really have special zoning for pools, but pools work better with the design that we have before us than what was in the current staff recommendation. Thank you.
Right. Commissioner Lupi-Pierre.
Yeah, I also will be supporting the motion, but for actually different reasons. I think that it's still important for all buildings to comply with the rules we have in place for exterior building materials. But I do find it compelling that it's meeting the window percentages that it met at the prior approval point, and that for me, I see no compelling reason to change those from what they were previously approved to be percentage-wise. I think that granting it would actually be a prudent thing to do.
Right. Commissioner Rockwell.
I just wanted to thank the applicant, Anna, for citing the alternative compliance standards and showing why your ask fits that, because I think it does. And so I think I agree with Commissioner Lupi-Pierre that we should be approving these if they fit code. So thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second to approve the site plan review with a change to condition number 3. Clerk, please call the roll.
Vreeland,
Aye.
Sweezy,
Aye.
Slack,
Aye.
Rockwell,
Aye.
Magrino,
Aye.
Lupi-Pierre,
Aye.
Kranzer,
Aye.
Gagnon,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
9-0.
And that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on item 2. Our next item for discussion is item 6. That's a zoning code text amendment related to the zoning code for skyways. And Mr. Hanauer is staff. We discussed this at committee of the whole a few weeks ago, but I understand there are a few more changes.
Two addendum items that you received. One, letters, public comments that came in after the publication, and then also possible proposed changes, a memo outlining a few tweaks to the language that you had in your report. And to sum up, those changes that are in that addendum are formatting changes, as well as some tweaks to the bird safe glazing definition based on some comments received after the report was published. So I'll be brief, but Skyway Text Amendment was introduced by Councilmember Gordon Palmisano in May 2015. And the proposed text amendment would do two things. That would convert those Skyway Advisory Committee guidelines into zoning code requirements or standards. And we see that this is a positive to allow staff and the Planning Commission to review skyways that at the same time as new buildings come forward, as well as to the better ability to enforce the standards that are in place. Since there are guidelines currently, that's been tough for the Downtown Council and the Skyway Advisory Committee to enforce. And then second, to create standards to have bird safe glazing for skyways. And this building element, skyways are well-known. It's well known that they are a hazard to birds, and with their large clear glazing or reflective glass, it's well known nationally that they do create a hazard for birds. What the ordinance is not is a new policy where skyways are appropriate. So as outlined in the memo or in the report, the standards are separated into 3 categories. That being for all skyways that cross the public street or a public alley, and skyways within the downtown skyway system. And the ordinance or the standards are in section 535-920. There are a couple things that we wanted to ask you, the commission, for feedback on. One being on some of these provisions in 535-920. First is, I mentioned we aren't changing the placement policy of where skyways are appropriate, but we want to see if we got this language correct or nailed it in terms of where they should be and considered. So we are proposing that for 539-922 that skyways will be considered for uses in downtown zoning districts and for regional sports arenas, office campuses of at least 1 acre, hospitals and college or universities uses outside of downtown zoning districts subject to the standards in this article. And this is the downtown Skyway zone. This map showing that B4, or the downtown zoning, and comparing the two, you can see we're proposing that the Skyways be considered within the downtown zoning, as well as the sports arena where the new stadium is located. Having some flexibility for some of those uses that are high intense uses that have often, the applicants have requested Skyways. So once again, the proposed language would be, in addition to the downtown zones, would be for regional sports arenas, office campuses, colleges, and universities. And some of the examples outside of downtown that you'll see Skyways, we have the Wells Fargo at East 28th Street, the Children's Hospital, and also North Central University along East 14th Street. So we're looking for feedback there. And then also in 530, excuse me, I think I got that. In 535-923, one of the biggest complaints that we hear is how to get into the Skyway system. So we want to make sure that we have the standards in place to help get people from the street to the Skyway and those that aren't familiar with the downtown system. So do these three provisions provide enough strength to enforce and to get to that help improve the current situation for new Skyways? And then the public entrance that is clearly defined and emphasized through the use of architectural features such as an awning, glazing, or other details. Exterior signage shall be provided at the street level entrance, noting the Skyway entrance location, and that elevators, stairs, and escalators linking the street and Skyway level shall be clearly identified with directional signage. And for new buildings, elevators, stairs, and escalators linking the street and Skyway level shall also be conveniently located. So we had a good discussion at the Committee of the Whole review. This is where we're at in terms of the language to help, once again, improve the connection with the street. The Target building is a good example of that did it well in terms of having this large glazing area that would show where the elevator or the escalator is to get to the Skyway system. And something that Cedar Rapids does or was proposing is to have signage, a clear uniform signage on the outside of the buildings to point out easily where you can enter the Skyway system. And I know in talks with the Downtown Council, this is something that they are looking at currently in terms of having better signage for the Skyway system as we prepare for the Super Bowl and other big events. Okay, so then moving on to the bird safe glazing requirements. Just wanted to point out before getting into the proposed language is that one of the common rules is that a 2x4 rule, and that is if you have vertical elements that help birds know that this is not a clear way to fly through, is that if you have vertical elements that don't create transparency more than 2 inches high or 4 inches wide, then birds will know that you can't fly through that, either through clear glass or reflective glass. And based on the feedback that we got after the publication, this is the proposed definition for bird safe glazing. That bird safe glazing shall include one of the following, and you can see that there's 3 possibilities to meet that. And it was heard that we wanted to have flexibility and to meet these standards given new technology is coming through and coming into play, but also to give those in the design community a few different options to create interesting and unique and effective ways of having bird safe glazing. So the first one is a lead material threat factor less than or equal to 25. We would have the applicants provide this certification that it would meet this requirement. The second is physical structures or glass patterns that meet that 2x4 rule. And the third is even more prescriptive, that being that you have a glass pattern with certain dimensions in terms of the lines or the dots. And these 4, that A, B, C, and D, those 4 ways have been shown by to be effective ways to reduce the amount of bird building strikes. And to get to this point, it's been a lot of work with Commissioner Kronzer. We have some people from Minnesota Audubon and Minneapolis Audubon come speak here today. They've been extremely gracious and generous with their time to get to these proposed standards. And I also want to thank Joanna Eccles, who will be helping me answer questions that might come up, and bringing in experts from around the country to help with these standards, the proposed standards that we have in place. And we shared these with, we had a few roundtables with those at the Downtown Council, with architects and developers, and one of the letters that you received in the packet is from Mike Ryan. So calling out some of the things that he saw as important changes, and we try to incorporate that quickly. Some of the examples I showed in the packet, and here are a few more that I just wanted to highlight of ways that you can meet the bird safe glazing requirement to show that this isn't a safe place to fly through, but at the same time, making sure that you maintain that transparency. And that's something else that we really want to have, that people can see inside to the skyways, and those inside the skyways to look out to help with public safety. So that concludes what I have, and Joanna Eccles from the Minnesota Audubon is here to help answer questions that you may have with the bird safe requirements.
All right. Commissioners, are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Magrino.
Yeah, I had a question maybe for Aaron. So with the development standards there, other than the Wells Fargo complex off 35W, are there any other office campuses that we can think of?
Commissioner Magrino, Graco in Northeast is one other that has a skyway for their campus. That's one that comes to mind for the campuses.
Okay. Do you know, was the intent there to not create any sort of non-conforming, I guess not exactly a non-conforming use, but I guess what was the intent with including it?
This is one that we really did want to get feedback on, because we know that there can be some consequences of perhaps reducing the amount of pedestrian life at the street. So the thought was to think through those examples, that those types of development that might want a skyway, and to see if this reached the level of having flexibility in considering to have a skyway for this type of development. So for, in this case, a campus outside of downtown, should we or should we not? Just trying to think through possibilities that might come to you, and to see if that one would be the one that we should consider to have a skyway.
Okay.
Aaron, I have a question along those same lines. Do you know offhand if we define office campus in the zoning code, or I just, maybe I'd be a little bit concerned that could be interpreted different ways. I suppose if we considered Graco an office campus, that is more of an industrial use. And if we open that up to, more industrial uses, I understand that maybe there's some need to accommodate some of those, but I'm not sure that we want to completely open a can of worms to skyways outside of downtown. And I'm not even sure that in our existing plans we envision a whole lot of large-scale office development outside of downtown.
Right.
So,
Chair Brown, it is not a specified use in the zoning code currently, so it's a really good point. And if the commission thought it could be struck from this version.
I did check the definitions, and it doesn't look like office campus is specifically defined
Okay.
word as a term.
Thank you.
It's not in the definitions section, so it's
So,
not really.
so office campus is not defined, we've confirmed. Are there any other questions of staff? Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes. What's a regional sports facility? Is it defined anywhere?
I guess, Jason, if something comes quickly to mind,
Sure, commissioners, we generally be referring to Target Center, Target Field, U.S. Bank Stadium, very major facilities that have a regional draw rather than a local.
But there's no actual definition.
I don't believe the use is specifically defined. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Rockwell.
Sorry, continuing down the same path here. I can't find where it is, but I know there's a variance provision in here, right?
Right.
And so, does the variance provision allow a variance to be granted to allow a skyway outside of these specified areas?
Bringing the language in here would allow an applicant to apply for a variance.
Right.
This was something that, with talking with the downtown council, where most skyways are in Minneapolis, that they thought it would be important to have the flexibility for the regulations, to have flexibility in case something wasn't, so there might be unique circumstances for their cases, but then as written, it would be, there's the ability to allow for a variance for any skyway.
So, yeah, I mean, I think to the other commissioners' questions, I think we could easily strike office campuses and regional sports arenas. If people, if we were comfortable with that, we can get to motions in a bit, but because we still could grant those with a variance in necessary circumstances. So that is correct. Right, Aaron?
That is correct.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions of staff? Commissioner Bender.
Just a quick comment. I did want to note that I've had 2 different developers request preliminary or have preliminary discussions with me about skyways in my ward in Uptown. So I think it's helpful to clarify in policy how we feel about skyways outside of downtown. And I'm very supportive of this language. So I think this is the first time we will have language, though, in policy that says we don't want skyways outside of downtown except in these specific circumstances where they've been allowed in the past. Yeah. I think it's good to clarify.
And Councilmember Bender, one thing I did want to point out is thank you for bringing that up, and this is for skyways that cross the public street or the public alley. And that if it was all contained within their private property, then they would be allowed to do that, to have that skyway.
In both of those cases, it actually would have crossed a public street.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gagnon.
Thank you. To the point around using regional sports facility, when we went through the Viking Stadium thing, we really didn't have, it came to us. If we had said no, they would have built it anyway. And so if we take that language out and we don't have control at all over it being built, really, then would we have control over a skyway if we took that specific language out? If they were asking for a variance, if we don't really have any say? I felt like we didn't have any say, that it was just a thing we had to just do and spend our time doing.
Are you asking for that specific case when there was additional?
Right. If something came to us like the Viking Stadium, which, I don't think anything else will, and they asked for a skyway, would we be able to say no if they're asking for a variance? Or would it even really come to us?
Well, commissioners, I can address that. There have been instances such as US Bank Stadium where state legislation has exempted those facilities largely from our local land use authority. And so they would likely not be subject to a provision in the zoning ordinance in that situation. However, we still would have the encroachment permit, which provides some ability to, limited ability to regulate other aspects of the skyway. So it wouldn't completely tie the city's hands, but the zoning code provision in that specific type of instance would essentially be rendered moot.
Okay.
Commissioner Sweezy.
Well, and isn't in that case, if we took out 4 regional sports arenas, wouldn't the US Bank Stadium have been in a downtown zoning district anyway?
Commissioner Sweezy is surrounded by downtown zoning, but
it isn't
interestingly enough, it's technically in an industrial district.
So if we took out the regional sports arenas, we would be talking about ones outside of the downtown core that would have to apply for a variance.
Generally, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Rockwell.
So, sort of to Commissioner Gagnon's question, I'm wondering if the city's attorney's office looked specifically at whether this language really holds us to these specific geographies in 2A. This is sort of like committee of the whole discussion here, but I wonder if we need a skyways will only be considered for uses in downtown, et cetera, because if we read this as written, I think as an attorney, you could argue that this applies, that these standards only apply for skyways in downtown zoning districts and these other places, but that skyways themselves could be anywhere. And I'm wondering if that was specifically looked at, and if it wasn't looked at, I think that we should table this and make sure that this language really limits skyways to the areas we think is limiting skyways. I don't know if my colleagues have thoughts on that, but when I read 2A as written, I feel like it could be tightened up.
Mr. Hanauer, do you have a response to that? Or
Yeah.
is that
Yes.
a valid comment?
Yes, absolutely. We did review initial language with our attorney, and one of the options mentioned, and I'm trying to pull up the email right now, but one of the options was to just allow it for the downtown zoning districts, period, and then the other options would have to apply for a variance. So that is an option. I will try to come to you in a couple minutes in terms of how that, what another option might be. But yeah, Commissioner Rockwell, that is an option of just limiting it to the downtown zoning districts.
Right. Are there any further questions of staff? Commissioner
Because
Rockwell.
that is the intent here, right? Which is that we are saying skyways are only allowed as of right in the downtown area, hospitals, universities, office campuses, et cetera. Anywhere else you need a variance.
Right.
Right. Okay. So we just need to make sure that we're comfortable that we're saying that.
And Mr. Hanauer, on the variance process, would there be additional standards that would be specific to variances for skyways, or would it just be, unless I'm missing it, we're not referring specifically to a variance process in here, would it just be the normal variance process?
As proposed, it would be the normal variances, the normal 3 variances, yeah.
There it is. Commissioner Vreeland.
Yes, I agree with my colleague. Skyways will only be considered is more appropriate language for the intent. And I think that whole 2A section could be rewritten a little bit better.
All right. And since we're moving beyond questions, we should probably open the public hearing for this item and take some testimony from anyone who would like to speak. I assume a few of you would like to speak on this item, so you can decide who goes first and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Wendy Hahn, 3824 47th Avenue South, Minneapolis. I'm a co-founder of the Minnesota Citizens for the Protection of Migratory Birds. This is a local nonprofit organization that works on protecting migratory birds in Minnesota, especially in the Mississippi Flyway. We are here, of course, to ask for approval of the Skyway Ordinance, which we think is very important. The inclusion of a bird-safe glazing requirement for new skyways is an important step in the protection of migratory birds. The danger to migratory birds from glass buildings is well documented by nationally and locally recognized organizations, American Bird Conservancy, National Audubon Society, Minnesota Ornithologists Union, Audubon, Minnesota, and Audubon Chapter, Minneapolis. Large expanses of glass are recognized as a leading cause of bird fatalities because birds mistake them for open space and then unknowingly collide with the glass. Hundreds of millions of birds die from collisions with glass each year in the United States alone, and skyways in particular have been recognized nationally and internationally as a building-related hazard to birds. Adding a bird-safe glazing requirement to the Skyway zoning code will build on the city's current participation in the Urban Bird Treaty. This program was created to involve cities in protecting declining bird species in urban areas through reducing hazards and also habitat improvement. Approving this Skyway ordinance or amendment will certainly result in reducing dangerous hazards to birds. I hope you'll consider it.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions of the speaker? If there are none, we can move on to other speakers, and you can, yes, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Jerry Balls. I'm currently the president of Audubon Chapter of Minneapolis. I'm here to urge you to adopt the proposed zoning code text amendment to Title 20, Chapters 525, 535, and 549, which includes a requirement for bird-safe glazing for new skyways. Adopting this amendment is a step needed to reduce the mortality caused by bird window collisions across the country. Minneapolis will join other cities that are stepping up to preserve a robust bird population that has a big economic effect by reducing the number of many destructive insects, as well as providing recreation for many individuals worldwide. Thank you for passing this ordinance to the full Minneapolis Council.
Right. Thank you. And yes, please state your name and address.
I'm Steve Greenfield. I've lived in Minneapolis for 42 years. Very proud of our park system and the presence of nature in the city. So I won't add too much to what the other speakers mentioned. I wanted to commend you on this this clarification of wording, though it sounds like some more work has to be done, and looking into the skyways in particular. Among the threats to migrating birds imposed by the glass buildings in the city, skyways are disproportionately a danger because of their location over streets where birds can pass through, and because of the presence of glass on both sides. So between that and on the other side, a relatively little imposition on anybody to make changes in this case make this a very wise thing to do, and one of the many things we can be, proud of in our city, and setting a precedent moving forward to paying attention to a factor like this. Thanks.
All right, thank you. And is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Hanauer.
There's one additional thing that I wanted to ask for feedback on, and that is, this was brought to my attention this afternoon, and that is for when should skyways be required to have that glazing? When and if should existing skyways be required to have that glazing be replaced with glazing that's bird safe? And in San Francisco, they've set a threshold of if you have 50% of your glazing replaced, that is the threshold where your glazing needs to be retrofitted and to have the bird safe glazing treatment in place. In the ordinance that you have in front of you, that provision is not in there currently. So I'd like to get your thoughts on having a requirement like that in this ordinance.
All right. So an additional question for us to consider, and the public hearing is still open, so I should just make sure no one else wants to speak. So if no one else wants to speak, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, seems like staff is looking for some feedback on a number of different points. Are there any further questions, or someone like to start the discussion? Commissioner Magrino.
I have a question, maybe for Mr. Wittenberg. Do we know, so the Viking Stadium is exempt from local land use regulation now. Do we know, is that sort of in perpetuity? Which seems like an odd question, but the Wolf family owns land across the street from that. So if they wanted to build a development and build a skyway from the stadium and it has I-1 zoning, they could add another skyway and it would be exempt from this, which is why I'm asking.
Commissioners, I don't know that that's a 100% resolved question. If and when significant changes come forward to the facility itself, I think we're going to have to my knowledge, across that bridge when we come to it.
Okay, that's a weird question.
And Mr. Hanauer, since you're seeking some input on a number of different issues, would it be best if we simply conditioned an approval on looking at some issues and maybe left it a little bit open-ended? Obviously, this still will go before the city council, so there's opportunity for further change.
That would be great.
All right.
That would work.
Commissioner Rockwell. Okay, I can start us off with a motion, and then we can discuss something specific here. So I like to move to recommend the ordinance as provided in the staff report with the following changes. Section 2A shall read, skyways will only be considered for, uses in downtown zoning districts or hospital, college, or university uses outside of downtown zoning districts, subject to the standards of this article.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Rockwell, do you want to elaborate that? And then I know Commissioner Lupi had a comment.
Yeah, I had one more clause that I was going to amend as well, but I can offer that in a second. So the intent behind those changes is to make explicitly clear that skyways are only allowed in those stated areas, and to eliminate the sports arena and office campus inclusion in those as of right skyways, with the knowledge that those are allowable with a variance. So two points to that. My second part of this, which we haven't discussed, but we can discuss in a moment, was to also amend section 3B by adding a number. So we've got number 3B1, 2, and then 3B3 would be an addition, which would read essentially the inverse of 3B2. What's up? I know, I would insert a 3 and then make 3 4. Between 2 and 3, which would be interior signage shall be provided at the skyway level, noting access to public streets. Yeah, okay, got a second on that. So, and the intent there is that, I think that the language here is good in terms of trying to facilitate that back and forth between skyways and street levels. But I think that we need to make sure that we are not just facilitating getting people up to the skyway system, but also getting people down onto the street. And so if we are creating a signage system to get people up into the skyways, that should be reflected inversely to get people down to the street and make clear where people can go to get there.
Right. So I will restate that motion. We had a motion and a second to approve the zoning code text amendment with the following conditions. One is an amendment to paragraph 2A that skyways are only considered for uses in downtown zoning districts or hospital, college, and university uses outside of downtown zoning districts, and that is striking the allowance for office campuses and regional sports arenas. And then the second condition is a change to paragraph 3B adding a section stating that interior signage is provided at Skyway level, noting access to public streets. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Sweezy.
Just a comment and then another question for staff. With respect to the amendment to 3, I'm actually somebody who got locked in a Skyway and then went down to the street and that door was locked. So I think just it doesn't require an amendment, but it sure would be nice if that interior signage would say the hours that things are open in the Skyway so that nobody has to call 911 like I did and ask a nice police officer to come and find a way to let me out. And that leads to just my other question. Who did the hours that they're open, did that come from the downtown council?
Correct.
Just 2 cents. I think Sunday at noon is late. I think if you want to go shopping at Target through the Skyway at 10 in the morning on a Saturday in January, you might also want to do that on a Sunday. And I know that they would be allowed to have them open if they wanted to, but particularly in the core Sunday mornings, there is absolutely no way to get around. They're all locked. That's when I got locked in. So maybe just as it moves further, I would strongly suggest expanding that time period on Sunday mornings.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Lukey-Peter.
Yes, I just want to echo everyone's sentiments regarding the clarification on the intent behind where we are desiring to see Skyways and where we are. And I think that clarifying that's really important just to set an expectation of where we will and will not want to see Skyways. In terms of the question regarding window replacement, I guess personally, I'm an architect, and I get that you want Skyways to look consistent and whatnot, but I sure would hate to see maintenance programs switch if it's a requirement for 50% of them are being replaced, all of a sudden they're kicking back the programs to 30% of windows per year. I don't know if there's a time frame involved. I personally would like to see it at any window replaced fall into these guidelines. And maybe that would actually encourage people if 20% are being replaced, they just go, well, in order to make it look right, we just replace the whole thing. Because I think the whole goal isn't to have this continue in perpetuity, but rather to encourage people to, as things, fade out or need to be replaced, they get brought up to current standards. I don't think we'd expect anything less for other important building codes. So I think that it's quite reasonable in my mind to say, even if one breaks, it needs to comply with this. And, in order to keep things looking nice, if they feel compelled to replace them in a strategic and artistically done manner that allows them to financially do it in percentages, so be it. So that would be my intent behind any language you write for the city council.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it would be fair. Actually, both of these comments are good suggestions to take into account as this continues to move forward. Commissioner Kronzer.
Oh, I completely agree with Commissioner Lukey-Peter's statement as far as trying to get this implemented into the existing Skyway system better. I wonder if it's not any piece of glass, but a small percentage, because these windows get kicked out quite often. Just wondering, maybe it's 10%, something really small. So when a seal breaks and they look at it, say, okay, we need to replace 3 panes, and they do that then. It seems maybe a little bit prohibitive to make every single one panel, but be open for interesting your comments too. And also, just thank you, Aaron and Eric, for the conversation about the bird safe glass. It's something that I'm working on professionally as well, and it's really exciting to see this kind of come together in both in a very prescriptive way and also a very open way, depending on how the project wants to approach the bird safe glass. Thank you.
All right. Are there any further comments on this? I can just recap things. So again, we have a motion and a second with a couple of conditions. One is an amendment to paragraph 2A that Skyways are only considered for uses in the downtown zoning districts or hospital, college, and university uses outside of downtown. A change to paragraph 3B that interior signage is also provided at the Skyway level, noting access to public streets. We also have a couple of friendly suggestions as this text amendment moves forward. One is to better state the hours of Skyways, possibly expand the hours of Skyways on Sundays in particular. Also, staff had requested some feedback on how we might implement some of these changes in the existing Skyway system, and we had suggested that maybe requiring replacement of any window to comply, or at least a very small percentage, so that we can encourage the existing Skyways to be brought into compliance sooner. So, Aaron, does that give you some pretty good feedback as this moves forward? Did we address the issues you wanted?
Yes.
Good. Good. All right. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Thunder.
Aye.
Gagnon.
Aye.
Kranzer.
Aye.
Lippke-Pier.
Aye.
Magrino.
Aye.
Rockwell.
Aye.
Slack.
Aye. Aye. Sorry.
Squeezy.
Aye.
Freeland.
Aye.
9-0.
And that motion carries. That concludes our discussion on item 6 and also concludes our meetings for today. We have committee of the whole this Thursday, and our next meeting is August 29th. We are adjourned.